All right, guys, welcome. This is going to be a bit of a longer video, so bear with me. If you are interested in hearing about the full breakdown of my marathon, this video is definitely for you. It's not going to be a quick one, so hang in there. But I think I've enjoyed putting together the videos that I put together so far and sharing a bit of the prep that I've done leading into this marathon that I felt like I would do a longer video just to get all my thoughts out. But super stoked about the outcome of the marathon. I ended up running a 3:16:40, which is a massive PR for me. My last marathon I ran 3:29. I had set a big stretch goal of running a 3:15 in this marathon, and very, very happy with the outcome. Before I dive into a little bit of the breakdown of the race, leading into the race, all that fun stuff, I do want to let you guys know that this has been like a gradual progression over, 3 years now that I've been running. So I know, I probably have people who are following along that haven't run or are thinking about running or maybe have started to run, and think like, oh, I'll never be able to make it to running those paces. I have consistently improved my time over the last 3 years. I started out running a 4:05 marathon, and then my most recent marathon was a 3:29, and now a 3:16. And I've been running consistently now at least 3 times a week for 3 years with very little, breaks really in between. Like maybe here or there following big preps, I'd take a week off of running. But outside of that, I've basically been running 3 times a week since. So lots of consistency in prep has gone into, getting an outcome like this, which I'm very proud of and super stoked about. But to dive into the race itself, so I'll take you through a little bit of the pre-race nutrition leading into the race, the morning of the race itself, and then a little bit of the post-race. But a big thing that I've worked on over the last couple races that I've done is my nutrition. A big factor into the success of getting an outcome that you're looking for in a longer endurance event is around nutrition and hydration, and that's something that I've been really practicing. So leading into the race, about 2 days prior is when I really start to carb load. So on the Thursday before the race, the Friday before the race, I was set out to hit 500 grams of carbs that day, which is a lot if any of you have tried to hit any carb macros before. And then Saturday, the day before the race, I was set out to hit 600 grams of carbs. So as much as, people like to say like that's the fun part, where you can kind of eat, pasta and bread and rice and potatoes and really like load up. For me, it's a hard thing to do. It's a ton of food to get in, and making sure you're getting it in within a reasonable hour. Like you don't want to be eating until 11 o'clock at night and not getting good sleep. So I was super diligent in getting that in. A lot of what I consume from a carb standpoint is like what we call white carbs. I will eat rice, I will eat potato, I will eat lots of bread and bagels, and pasta is what a lot of like my carbs were consumed of. I'm still getting protein, like I'm still aiming for closer to my body weight in protein, so it's not like I'm just eating carbs on those days. But lots of rice, pasta, bread. Want to lower like your fiber intake, so not really eating a lot of vegetables, not eating a ton of fruit, which are normally like carb sources that I will get in my normal diet. So 500 grams on the Friday, and then 600 grams on the Saturday before the race. I'm also drinking like a ton of water. I'm always hydrating. I feel like I'm always drinking. If you know me, I'm walking around with a massive gallon jug and just getting that in the day. So hydration isn't something that I totally struggle with, but what is important is to get in like sodium and magnesium in your electrolytes. So I do kind of like preload those. I like to use the Element packets. So that's what I'll use to get more sodium and electrolytes into my body prior to the race. So I'll be consuming those before. I normally consume one of those a day, so I usually stay consistent with that. I think maybe the day before I did 2 electrolyte drinks, just to like have a little bit of extra in the body, but that is kind of the main thing that I did prior to. And then the day of, so race day, I raced at 7 a.m. So trying to get like my pre-race meal in at least 2 hours before. So having my first meal at 5 o'clock. Something that I've practiced and just seems to work for me. So it's just something that I consistently do is I'll do a bagel with peanut butter and honey and 1 banana. So I'll eat that at 5 o'clock. So 5 a.m. before the race. And then I also like to like sip on electrolytes and a carb drink leading into the race. So there's about 30 grams of carbs in the drink, as well as 1 packet of Element, which is just more electrolytes. I like to just do it. It's something that I've gotten into as a habit, and it gets me a little bit of extra carbs, excuse me, just prior to going into the race. So on race day, arrived about an hour before the race, so got there at 6 a.m. More just to make sure I was there to calm my nerves, my anxiety, all that stuff. And then what I will do is a little warm up. So I'll do a dynamic warm up prior to the race, with a little bit of running. So something that I worked on this prep was to try to do a little bit better of a warm up leading into the marathon. Before on race day, you get kind of caught up, you get a little nervous, and you do a little, a couple stretches here and you don't really get into it. What I really focused on was trying to prep my body because I wanted to get into really running some pretty fast paces for me. So what I had worked on is doing like a 1 minute warm up jog at like zone 1, then 1 minute at zone 2, then 1 minute in zone X, I think we call it, which is like just a little bit below my race pace, and then trying to do like a minute or 2 minutes at race pace, and then a zone 1 cool down, and then a little walk. And so I tried to get some version of that in. It wasn't perfect, just with like the event, the setup, didn't really have a space to like go do that, but I tried my best to get that in, focusing on like prepping my body to like get into running those paces. I find I take a little bit of time to get settled into a stride, and so I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to get into like a good zone soon enough into the race. So after that, the race started at 7 a.m. My goal was to try to hit a 3:15 marathon, so I kind of moved up towards the front of the corral. They did have some pacers there. That was the one thing that was a little bit different from other races, is there wasn't as many pacers. It being a smaller race itself totally makes sense. But what I've learned in racing is for me anyway, is stick to your own plan, focus on what you are trying to do, and try not to get caught up in other people's paces or the pace bunnies. Like, use those as references, but trying to really focus on myself, what my watch is saying, and how I'm feeling is something that I've just tried to adopt, and it's worked for me, on the race on Sunday. But yeah, goal going in was 3:15, which is an average of 4:37 per kilometer pace, which is a big increase from my last marathon where I was averaging around 4:55 per kilometer. I had a plan going into this. So before every race, I will write out like a race plan. So I'll write out like what my main focus is for the race. I'll write out some mantras that I might say to myself, throughout the race as things get a little difficult. I'll write out my whole nutrition plan, as to like when I'll be taking a gel, when I'll be taking a salt pill, how much water, like what am I going to grab at aid stations. I'll write that all out, and then I'll also have my my pacing plan. So my pacing plan for this race was to try to accomplish a negative split, which essentially means you're just getting faster as the race progresses. So my plan was to come out from kilometers 0 to 10 holding a 4:41 pace, and then from kilometer 10 to 20, 2021, I was going to be increasing that pace to 4:39 per kilometer, and then from 20k, 21k to 30 to 31k, I was going to be holding a 4:36 pace, and then from 31k to the finish, the goal was to hang on to a 4:33 per kilometer pace, which would bring me in right at that 3:15 mark. So that was my goal heading out. And as the gun went off, it's a little bit hectic at the start. Everyone's kind of like corralled in, and then people start to spread out. I've always tried now to come out a little slower on my first kilometer because you get caught up in the hustle of the race, the excitement. So I came out a little bit slower on my first kilometer, around 4:45, which is totally fine. I knew that was what I wanted to do, so I was happy with that. And then I started to settle in, and I would say for the first 10 kilometers of the race, I felt really good. Legs, I could just feel the energy in my legs. I could feel, there's no better way to describe it other than like I was just kind of like floating. Like I could just feel really strong in my legs, and the paces were really on point. I was hitting 4:41s, some were a little bit faster, 4:39, 4:38 sometimes. So I really found myself having to almost slow down at the start, which is a good feeling, not feeling like I need to chase to catch up. So I was really happy with that. And then as I got into, the second phase, which would have been 10 to 21 kilometers, when I had to go up to start hitting 4:39s, I again found that to be like a very manageable pace for me, because my legs again were just feeling really strong, really fit, which was super mentally positive for me, because like I really set a goal that was going to challenge me. And I think when you are setting out to push your limits and when you don't feel good at the start of that, it can be really mentally challenging, which I faced a lot of that in training. So to have come out with the race and just feeling really good and feeling strong made me super pumped. So I was hitting those paces like really well the first half of the marathon. My nutrition plan throughout this whole thing was to remain just consistent with a gel every 20 minutes. So I would take a gel that had 30 grams of carbs. I was using Precision Hydration, which I love their gels. I just changed to them, but they're so good. So I would do 30 grams of carbs in that gel every 20 minutes. And then I would alternate with a caffeinated gel, which had 100 milligrams of caffeine in it. So I would take a gel every 20 minutes. I would take a salt tab, which had about 250 milligrams of sodium, roughly every 30 minutes, depending on kind of where the aid station was. The great thing about the course is there was a ton of aid stations, and they were really well placed. That was one of the best things about this race. And my goal at every aid station was to take one water and one Gatorade at least, and get that down. Just really important to like keep hydrating, even though it wasn't a hot day, keep hydrating, and then obviously getting a little bit extra like electrolytes and sugar with the cup of Gatorade. So that was my plan. Really nailed my nutrition plan on this race. So for the first half, as well as nailing the splits, I was crushing the nutrition. I think I finished my half marathon split was around 1:38, which is like right on pace for what I was looking to do. I think my previous like half marathon PR was like 1:37 something. So I was right around like my half marathon PR. And the course was an out and back. So you basically did 2 loops of the course, which a lot of people find to be boring, which it is boring, but I actually really liked it. For the course was really good. It was easy to follow. Didn't really have to think too much. You knew you're just going out and back. I really actually liked that. It's the first time I've done an out and back marathon, and I would definitely do it again. And the course was very flat, which is also nice when you're trying to go for a PR. So after I got to the half marathon, that's when things started to become a little bit more challenging for me from hitting my splits. At that 21 to 30 kilometer mark, I was going to start to go and hit some 4:36 per kilometer, which meant I just had to speed it up a little bit. Again, still feeling like really good at this point, like not concerned at all, really strong, feeling energized. Which is normal. I think the first like 30K of a marathon in my mind doesn't really count. The real race starts at 30K. But what does matter is through that first 30K is making sure you're, like I like to say, earning the right to finish the race. So making sure you're nailing your nutrition, you're staying on top of your paces, you're keeping yourself mentally locked in. I think that is where a lot of people struggle, and that's where I've struggled in the past. So my main focus for the first 30K was to stay focused on nutrition, keep myself mentally in a good place, and hit my splits to earn the right to really send it at that 30K plus. So nutrition was really good through that stretch of the race. Still hitting the 20-minute gels, all that stuff. My splits, I was having a hard time getting some consistent 4:36 splits, but again, I was like really feeling good. I was hanging on. I knew I was in the realm of like being able to hit the 3:15 goal, so I wasn't panicking at all. If anything, I was like super positive about where I was at. The nice thing about racing is you can kind of find some people that you can use as like pace bunnies. So there's two women on the course that I was running with for a period of time that really helped me. And I'll use these people as like a way to kind of pace myself. So I'll look at my watch and see where I'm hitting paces, and then I'll be running with someone else who I can tell is a strong runner. Couple ways that I identify this is like just look at their form, look at how they're breathing at this point in the race. You can really tell when people are hurting and when people aren't. And are they keeping up with nutrition and have some type of nutrition plan? So anyway, there's this one lady who eventually ended up crushing me actually, but for this part of the race, she was really good at like being someone I could like match my pace and pace off of. So that was really nice through that 20 to 30K stretch. So when I hit the 30K mark, this was like in my mind a mental kind of barrier that would really determine like where I would be at to finish off at the race. In my previous marathon at the 30 to 31 kilometer mark, I really started to not feel great, which is like to be expected. Like you're not going to feel good running a marathon throughout the whole entire thing, but it really was a struggle for me in my last race. So I was using this as a gauge as to like how hard I would have to, really dig in mentally and like where I was at in terms of like the amount left I had to push. And I was super pumped. Like I hit 30K and I was still feeling like really good. Nutrition was still on point. However, at like the 30K plus mark, I started to make a decision to actually take in more nutrition and get on it earlier than every 20 minutes. And this is just something that I've learned about myself over the years, just where my body is at and being aware of like, okay, I'm starting to feel like I need some fuel. So I think my window started to shorten a little bit. I started maybe doing a gel every 15 minutes, which is like, I'm taking in a lot of gels, but I've trained this. And that's what's allowed me to be prepared. And coming into the race, I brought extra gels on the run just in case I felt like I needed to do that. So I'm super glad that I did that. So I started to take gels every 15 minutes versus every 20 minutes. And then the aid stations were just a mental like relief for me. It's like I couldn't wait to get to an aid station to like get a drink, just like a nice like mental reset. So started to have to use some mental tricks, I guess, to keep myself really dialed in. But at that point, between 30 to 34 kilometers, I was still feeling really strong. I would say from 35 kilometers on is when I really started to like hurt. And what I've started to do mentally, which I've learned is like a big part of racing is how do you mentally win. And something that I've just accepted is like what I felt at that point is just what I wanted and what I knew was coming. So when it did come on, it wasn't like a surprise, and it was almost like something like, okay, here we are. Now what are you going to do with it type thing. And so from 35K on, I really did start to hurt for the first time in the race, and really had to start mentally pushing myself and staying focused. And at this point in the race, I wanted to be hitting 4:33 splits, and I was hitting some of them, but it wasn't really happening exactly how I wanted it to. But I was still hanging in there. Like I was still hitting, 4:35, 4:36, 4:37s, 4:33. So I was in and around that range. And I think an area where I want to improve on in my racing is my ability to be more consistent in those negative splits, and actually be able to like push those splits even more as I'm getting fatigued. But there's always things, that we can work on. And so from, 35 kilometers to about, let's say 40 kilometers was a big, mental push. And there was another girl that I was running with for quite some time, and I could tell she was a strong runner, and she was really hanging in there, and she was actually kind of carrying me for a bit. I was trying my best just to stay on her hip, because I knew she was someone who was strong and was going to finish strong. And then she ended up kind of pulling away from me because I couldn't keep up with her pacing, and I knew that if I tried to hold her at that point, I might blow up. But I could see her. She was within like view, and I was like, okay, keep trying to like hold this person in your sight. So that was another good thing to have. And I did end up actually catching her and passing her at the end, which kind of leads me into, the end of the race, where I could tell I was like, I was on the verge of being able to hit that 3:15 goal. And probably at 40K, I was really like, all right, then this is the point where you kind of just, you go for it and hope for the best. And at that point, I had basically taken all my nutrition. I think I had one gel left, and I could start to feel a little bit of like tightening in my calf and my quad and my hamstring, like on the right side. And at this point I'm starting to really push the pace a little bit, to try to go for it. And I was a little bit concerned that I was going to cramp, but I took that last gel. Whether that had an impact or if it was just mentally a good thing to really push to the end, I don't really care. It helped, and I sent it really hard, and I ended up not cramping. And I remember, like, these are just the games you play with yourself. I was even just like verbalizing like out loud, like, I'm not gonna cramp, I'm not gonna cramp. I was saying this because I'm like, that would suck if I cramped like a kilometer and a half out from the finish. But I was able to like push really hard at the finish. I think I finished the last kilometer like at a 4:24 pace, which was a great hard finish. And I came in at 16:40 was like my chip time, and then I think like the gun time was like 3:16:50. So super pumped with that. Like, honestly, it was like exactly what I had trained for. Super proud of the effort, and as much as I'm pumped about the time, like, that's a massive PR. I honestly never thought that I would run anything like that when I started running. But what I'm like most proud of is just like the total preparation and plan and effort in itself. Like, I was so consistent on this build of training. I didn't miss a single workout. I focused on my nutrition. I trained my nutrition for racing. I strength trained the way that I need to strength train. I mentally prepared the way that I need to mentally prepare. I went into the race weekend and did everything right. So to see that pay off is just like super cool. And my ultimate goal is to qualify for Boston, which is going to require me to run like a sub 3 hour marathon. And so right now, the most important thing, obviously I need to be more fit and I need to make improvements on that. But the most important thing for me right now is to hone in on the training process itself and figure out what my body responds to from a training standpoint, how my body responds from a nutrition standpoint, knowing that like the goal is to go sub 3. And then even just the race experience of like how to take nutrition and how to navigate some, challenges that you might face on the race course, and how your body feels when you're like pushing limits and knowing when you can push and when you can't. Like those are all things that are going to compound together to have me hit that goal. So I think it was such a great experience for me, and such a positive step in the right direction. I'm like super stoked about it. Post race, I was pretty trashed, not gonna lie. Um, the main thing people want to know is like, what do you eat? I also have to give a shout out to my lovely girlfriend Kendra. She took care of me. Probably listened to me complain the whole way home about how my legs feel like they're being stabbed. She made sure we got McDonald's right away after, get a couple egg McMuffins in you, and then my meal was some pizza, some wings, some waffle fries, and some Dairy Queen, which definitely hit the spot. From a recovery standpoint, though, making sure that I immediately got in some protein and some fuel was important. I tried not to forget about the recovery. So making sure you get a lot of food, a lot of protein in, and then sleep. So I made sure I got to bed early. I think I got about 8.5 hours of sleep, which was super beneficial to my recovery. As I record this video today, it's a day after the marathon. Still pretty trashed from like a nervous system standpoint, just a little foggy, which is to be expected. And then, some soreness, like my quads, hip flexors, and like my lower core is pretty sore. But honestly, overall, feeling like really good. I train quite a bit, so I think I will bounce back from this pretty quickly and recover, but most likely going to take a week off running and then figure out what I want to do next from a training standpoint. Definitely not going to jump right into like a prep for a race. Maybe just have some fun running and build some volume. And then I do want to race again in the spring, so maybe like a May race. So I'll probably start some type of like prep for that maybe in the new year. But I haven't really thought too much about it. After doing this race and hitting the times and like seeing like my capabilities, and I know there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of my fitness, like I definitely think that it's realistic for me to take a shot at going sub 3 in a year's time from now, like maybe sometime next year in October. I'm definitely not underestimating though the challenge of doing that. It's going to be hard. There's going to be a lot of work required, but I definitely feel way more confident in myself in committing to a build and getting what I want out of it. So I do know that I will qualify for Boston. I will hit that sub 3 hour time. When that'll happen, not exactly sure. Hopefully it's in a year, but if not, I have till I'm 35. Yeah, super stoked overall about this. I know this is a long-winded video. If you guys hung through all the way to the end, like I totally appreciate it. And I think I'm going to continue to document some of this stuff and like create some content around it, because I know there are other people out there who are just getting into running or might want to get into running, or whatever it may be, trying to push themselves from a fitness standpoint. And I've learned a ton from being able to listen and consume other people's content, and specifically people who are very similar to myself. I'm no one special. I'm just like very committed to training, and I'm consistent, and I've taken years to build up that muscle, and I've learned how to do that. And I enjoy sharing that because I know that that can help other people in some way. And I've learned a lot from other people that have gone through the process. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions around any of the race, the prep, running, whatever, send me a message. I love talking about this stuff. But I hope that you guys pursue something that is challenging. I hope you commit to it, and I hope you diligently work towards it. And then most importantly, I hope you guys dig deep. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Peace.